I'm Andrew Southworth, and this is my Point Four Cents.
I'm Jesse Cadden.
I'm Dustin Boyer.
And I'm Matt Bacon. And this week we'll be discussing how musicians actually make money and what their different income streams are. Then I interviewed my friend Todd White, owner of K Volume Records, who also manages the rapidly rising metal band Castle Rat. And we talk about what it really takes to make an artist blow up, what their strategies were, and how they navigated the crazy seas of the rapid growth of the project. If you want to understand what it looks like to go from being a DIY musician to full time, this is the interview for you.
Then after the interview, we'll be discussing Sombr and his reaction to a fan making a video about how much they disliked his concert and if he did a good job responding or not. And then behind the paywall, which you can get access to through Apple Music and through YouTube, we'll be discussing email versus SMS marketing and if Full Sail University is actually a scam college. So guys, we should point out to the audience, Andrew's back, which we're really thrilled about. And despite
How was Disney?
Disney was magical, the most magical place, you might say.
See, to that one person in the comments who I said that to that didn't believe me, now you have proof that we're not lying to you. But
someone didn't believe you?
Yes, they said, why did Andrew leave the podcast?
Wow. Yeah. No, I took a 2-week trip to Disney. We brought our 6-month-old baby girl, and we had a blast. She's not going to remember any of it, but we'll
that doesn't matter. Don't let people. That is the worst thing to say to parents. Why are you taking them? They're not going to remember because it's fun for me.
Exactly, man. Yeah, that's what we were like. People were like, "You're not going to remember any of it." I was like, I don't care. We're bringing her because we have to, because we want to go. And then we'll
just lock her in a closet until she's 5, so she won't remember anything.
Would people just not do anything fun with their kids until they're 5? Like, you kidding me?
Yeah, just stick some goldfish in there, call it a day.
Yeah, parenting.
I should also explain to everybody that the reason this podcast looks different this week is because the entire web is built on Amazon Web Services, and it's currently down, which means many people can't order food, make podcasts, or do other things. So we're on archaic technology over here.
This is also actually another great time to mention that it's good to have an email list, and it's good to like actually own your audience and stuff, because anytime the web crashes and you can't reach your people, everyone brings that up. So this is your reminder. People watch it.
It's a great reminder, especially since we'll be discussing that behind the paywall this week, and I love to plug that.
I also just think it's interesting because I think not a lot of people fully understand, like, the entire backbone of the internet is Amazon Web Services. Like, every service that you use that you think is cool, from Facebook to whatever you use to video chat to, I don't know,
is
whatever.
Meta on AWS?
I'm pretty sure
I think they have their own...
That's not right. Google, Meta, Amazon, and one other one all separate out.
Yeah,
but AWS is like the biggest.
Most websites are either AWS or Cloudflare, and then like Meta's big enough to have their own, and Google's big enough to have their own. But like most of the internet, I think 50% of all websites are on AWS.
OpenAI is the one I was thinking of. That's also separated out.
Yeah.
So we're going to discuss income streams, right?
Yeah, I made a couple bacon spits this week about this, where essentially I wanted to break down how I see artists making money. And I wanted to, obviously, pretty much every pro artist kind of makes money in different ways, and there's obviously many different paths to success. Like, you'll see artists who have 3,000 Spotify monthlies but make $8,000 a month on their Patreon, or you'll see artists who don't tour but they make a lot of money from radio. But I wanted to break down sort of big picture how a lot of it ends up working. Especially if you have sort of the more conventional income streams, which is really like merch, touring, streaming. I think those are like the main ways most artists make money. Would you guys agree with me?
Yeah.
Without putting a million asterisks on it, yeah.
I mean,
I think I put a bunch of asterisks before.
Most artists I know, I'd say they're like between a third and half of their income is streaming, depending on their artistry, and then like a big chunk, like a third to half's touring, and then like another 20%, depending on where those other percentages fell, as merch. But
I'd like to take streaming and categorize it as royalties, though, because I've got some artists that can make a lot more money than they're making on streaming on other usages around their sound through BMI and SoundScan, really. Not SoundScan, excuse me, Sound Exchange.
Can you talk about how that works?
Yeah, so just to be clear, like, your publishing collects, like BMI, CSAC, ASCAP, collects from public performances, right? So if you get a song played at a stadium or a venue or some other public performance, that's where they're collecting. Where they don't, oh, and that does include terrestrial radio. What it does not include is internet and satellite radio. And so there is an organization called Sound Exchange that collects from those things. And here's the many artists don't know this, and it's funny to me because if they ever get played on Sound Exchange, excuse me, when they get played on Sirius, there is, and I don't know exactly how it works, there is some royalty payout to like BMI and ASCAP, but the bulk of your payout happens through Sound Exchange. And so
The same way that you just think of it this way is that since that's not a royalty that goes through DistroKid and things like that, that portion of the royalty goes through Sound Exchange.
Correct. And if you're not signed up on a Sound Exchange and you've gotten played on Sirius XM, it's a lot of money. And you might be thinking, well, how could it be a lot of money? Regular radio doesn't pay that much. It's like, yeah, because regular radio has like a certain terrestrial radius, right? Macon, Georgia, or like some random
people pay a
town.
lot of money to join Sirius XM. It's like $20 to $30 a month to have Sirius XM.
But that's not even why it pays out better. It's because it plays to millions of people, right?
Yeah.
There's fewer stations if you look at it, even though there's a lot of stations, like 200 music stations. Think about it in terms of how many stations are in the US terrestrial, thousands and thousands. So you're getting exposed to more people, which means you earn more money. I had one artist, and I brought this up in an interview a couple months back, but I had this one manager friend who came to me and she's like, "Oh, we're getting so much Sirius XM. I just wish it paid more." And I was like, "Well, how much are you getting streamed on there?" Like 3 or 4 times a week. I'm like, "You should be paid thousands. Are you on Sound Exchange?" She's like, "No, what's that?" She signed up and there was $40,000 sitting in there waiting for the artist, which by the way, doesn't sit there forever. So yeah, if you're not signed up,
7 years it sits there for. I've done this so many times. I've
and
been like artists 10 years in, they are like just signing up and it really sucks.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's like a major not talked about income stream. The other thing I think is people don't always seem to grasp the like real economics of touring. And I feel like this is a place people fall down because it's like what I always try to, because I end up on like a lot of budgeting conversations. What I always end up trying to break down for people is like your minimum cost for touring is what? It's like 150 bucks a day on gas, right? If you're renting a van, that's 150 bucks a day. If you have a driver, that's 150 bucks a day. Per diems, that's like $50 if you're a band, right? That's like paying for people's food. So we're already at like $500 a day in costs. Plus, hotels if you don't sleep on someone's couch. So that's what, $100 to $200 a day. So now we're at like $700 a day in costs.
Well,
And the way I set up
even higher
tours,
than that depending on the size of people you're shipping. I mean, I haven't
Exactly.
done a tour where it's 200 a night. I can't think of the last time I did a tour that was 200 a night.
I'm talking about like DIY.
5 guys in one hotel room sharing the beds and
It-
couches.
Been there. Yeah. Like that's what I'm trying to like break down here. And like even then the cost per day is like 700 bucks a day. Obviously there's ways to reduce that, but it just shocks me sometimes when I see artists going on tour and like they haven't done that calculus. Like it's very important in my eyes to understand your break-even number every day.
Merch cuts, which venues have them or not, seems to shock every artist. Like I just watched a huge artist that's been at it for almost a decade this weekend being shocked at their merch cuts on this tour. And it's like, it's overlooked so much of how much of a dent, even though we all know we all lie when we do the count out, that merch cut is gigantic.
Yeah, it's weird because a lot of times it is in some type of contract ahead of time that someone is signed off on, and then people are throwing a stink about it, even though they literally agreed to it ahead of time. But then there's also a bunch of other people who there was just no actual like contract or it wasn't in there, and then it was just a surprise at the end. And so it seems to be kind of shitty from both sides. I mean, I don't like the idea of a merch cut anyways, but like if it's in the contract that you signed, you should know about it and anticipate that in your budget, right? That you're going to have to give up 20% of your merch sales on that date, and that means it's going to be 20% harder to make money on those sales.
By the way, if you're
And
an
the other
artist of
piece-
any particular power in your touring to request things, please request that you not pay that commission. Like negotiate that out, because that actually helps smaller artists too, because that's something the industry and those artists with power are trying to push on, because it is an absurd thing to have to do.
Some venues justify because they're like, well, our people are manning your merch booth and are selling it for you. But like, and for most of the indie artists, that's not the case. And like, even when the
Yeah.
headliner has those people, the opener does not. Just the headliner does. And so the opener is standing at their own merch booth and they're getting shafted and they're not getting the, if you don't have to do that, you expect to pay for it. But if you're paying for it and you don't get the luxury of the benefit of it,
There is
getting screwed.
venues that require both fees. When I was on tour last summer, we played a certain chain of venues that I'm gonna leave off of here for the sake of me getting in trouble of saying something I didn't sign on to be able to say, but like they made us hire both a person and took our cut.
So they didn't even give you any benefits. Great.
No, I mean it was a ridiculous cut, and it's like I mean, as every artist says, it's like we brought the boomers out. The boomers came to see us play, and at the end of the day, we got a really shitty, barely profitable merch share.
Well, and here's how you get back at the venues too, is that you record with your PRO, ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, that your music was played publicly at that venue, and you get a cut of what they're supposed to be paying. And now they're most of them have blanket licenses anyway, so you're not really
Well,
getting back at them. Some of them don't though. And then
yeah.
when you put this in there, it flags to these PROs like, hey, this venue has our music playing in their venue and they're not paying, and then the PRs annoy the hell out of them.
I've heard
Which, by
the
the way,
PRO salesmen are like bullies. Like they
oh
go to
yes,
venues, they threaten them with like multi-$1,000 bills for
yep.
legal action if they don't pay. And
I have a great story of being the only employee at the venue when this happened, and this is before I knew about things like this. And the guy is literally berating me, and I'm like, buddy, I don't even know what language you're speaking because I was literally in music business college at the time. I'm like, none of this I was also in college before Google, so it was like just not possible for me to know what any of this is. And I'm like, dude, you are talking to the wrong guy. Like, look at me.
So there's a problem when you lie about your merch cuts, and I've had people much smarter than me explain this to me, where basically, especially if you're doing it within a group of venues or with a promoter you want to try to work with in the future, they are calculating your merch sales into the guarantee they're offering you and into the overarching business. And so if you agreed to a merch cut in advance, or even if you didn't and they tried to just spring it on you, you want to tell them actually how much merch you sold, because then they actually understand your value and it makes the deals more fair for everyone. So it might hurt in the moment, but trying to deceive people like that will actually cut you in the long run. And also, like, they have people who pay attention. Like, they're not idiots. They know what it looks like if someone sells $5,000 of merch, right? Or versus 1,000 versus 10,000. And like, if you get a reputation as someone who's like bending the truth a little too much,
yeah, I don't want
people
to
are
turn
not
this
going to
into
want to work with
a
you.
whole topic on merch cuts, 'cause I'm sure we could probably rant on this alone for like an hour. But in my opinion, if it's the springing it on a band, like just a surprise was never talked about and was actually not in a contract, like I think the band should just say, fuck you.
Yeah.
We're not paying that, and then slam them on social media and then know that they're never going to play there again. But then that way it kind of warns like that should never be a surprise.
I tour managed in 2017. I had a band open up very last minute for Dorothy nationwide tour. We was like 45 dates, and we didn't sign any contracts in advance. But they, like you guys mentioned, they blanketed us as the opener underneath the contract that they had with Dorothy, which had a merch. And there were like one or two dates where I was just doing it because I was like, oh, this is part of the deal. And then I, like 2 or 3 dates in, I sat down and I was like, why are we paying this? Like, we don't actually have any sort of contract. So every single night I fought them, and we weren't getting paid by the venue. We were getting paid a support slot lump sum by the band. They were collecting all of it and just paying us out every night. So they had no leverage over me, and I fought it every single night, and they had to capitulate because I just said no. I'm like, what are they going to do? Fight me? Like, so, these venues, they want to act like they're institutions that cannot be fought. But I've run these venues. Jesse's run, like we've been on the other side of this, and they most of the time, like Jesse's example earlier, they kind of don't even understand what's going on. They just know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't get how it hurts the artist. The PRO thing is funny to me because I also worked at a venue. And I remember the owner coming to me. He's like, "This guy's trying to scam me," and I'm like, "No, dude, he's trying to get artists paid. They're trying to get paid too." But it's a real thing, and you can't ignore it because you will be sued because you're stealing the music. So yeah, fight the venues on it. If you don't have a signed deal, exactly what Andrew said, fight them.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of sympathy because venues' margins today are fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But they're also, like when it's Live Nation, like Matt's point is valid that they're calculating in this stuff, but also, I mean, as I'm doing a lot of work now on what we do to fight back and weaken Live Nation, and as I do my research, I do think that flat out blanketing saying, like Live Nation has this built-in bribe that they do for a certain level of artists where they give a bonus to them so that they book through their venues right now. But like, we're going to have solidarity at some point against these type of things.
Well, and I just don't understand it. Look, you got a bar.
Mhm.
I've got my merch table. Let's call it even, right? Like, why do you need a cut? And I remember going to some venues, I'm like, give me a cut of the bar. And the owners are like, how dare you? Right? Like, that's their reaction. They're so offended.
Their new argument now is that no one drinks anymore. And I mean, it really is like, yet again, I'm not on the venue side, but like this week alone, we saw like just me hitting Apple News, 4 articles about how much less Gen Z drinks, people drink post the pandemic, and all these things, and that like
It's
that
down.
revenue source is insanely down.
I literally had a conversation with someone who works in Venue World today for asking them some questions for a bacon spits I want to make, and they told me that bar sales are down 40% since pre-pandemic. So
I
that's
wonder how much of that is the drinking versus like just how crazy expensive getting drinks when you're out at a bar and a restaurant is.
A lot of it is the drinking.
I do think that there is a both of the above approach here, that Live Nation has made everything in every venue, even if it's not Live Nation, made the prices go up because everybody does it to be competitive. But there's also this other thing that, like, we didn't have ketamine 5 years ago, and I have no idea why people enjoy going to ketamine.
I'm in a hole.
Yeah, like, I don't know why you would want to be out at a show on ketamine, but when I run into people like last week or 3 weeks ago at Nita Geraci, and they're like, "Oh man, ketamine," I'm like, "You're out of your fucking mind to be on this at this."
That's why everybody listens to her. No, I'm just kidding. She's great. She's great.
But like, alcohol sales are down. You know what else is down? Physical music sales. So like, Cry Me a River. Also, kind of like,
yeah, we're all in the same boat. And economic forces. I mean, dude, I went out. We're doing like a company photo shoot this week, and I was like, I need to go get a new outfit. I bought pants, a shirt, a jacket, and a belt. $400 at Dillard's, right? Like everything, dude. I was like,
man,
what
Dustin's
the fuck?
fancy.
No, dude, it was like jeans. I was like, this is insane how expensive this is. And it's just the economy as a whole. And, that's the thing about the touring world too, is that like 15 years ago when I was an artist manager, touring was everything. I worked with rock bands and Southern rock bands. And if you didn't tour, but we would still, even, I don't even know what it's like now, but even back then, I did on that same 2017 tour, we were getting paid probably more than we were worth. We were getting paid $500 a night, which was pretty good. But to make sense of it, what we did instead of getting a hotel room every night, we posted on city subreddits like a month in advance of the show and said, hey, if we can crash at your house, we'll put you on our guest list. And since it was Dorothy, people kind of were like, oh, Dorothy. And so in every city, we had a place to stay, which weirdly enough, nobody was murdered. But it seems like a recipe for murder. But there was only one night in Salt Lake City where it was such a bad situation that we got a hotel room. But, I think that artists don't realize that really early on, when you want to get in that 15 passenger van and make sense of it, you've got to put in the work to save money. And I think it was Pomplamoose. This was like 10 years ago now. And maybe Jesse remembers, but Pomplamoose.
I remember this. This was so dumb. I think you and I talked about this 10 years ago.
Did we? Probably. It was such a thing.
They put up the tour expenses. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pomplamoose was a YouTube band. I don't know if they're still around. But they're like,
they are.
Oh,
We're going on
the
our
And this was-
first.
founder of Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
about to
that's
say,
right.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
had no
Jack
idea.
Conte.
Yeah, that was the whole founding myth, bro.
Yeah, he made Patreon for Pamplemousse.
I didn't
Yeah.
even know that.
know
But
either.
yeah, they went on tour for their first time, and they're like, touring doesn't make sense, and here's why. And each of them had their own hotel room. They had a bus, right? And they were doing 750 cap room to 1500 cap rooms. Like there wasn't enough money to be made. They should have been in a 15 passenger band with a bedroom or hotel room a night suffering, because that's the only way they would have made money.
I think this is a great thing that I heard a booking agent say many, many years ago, which is that you have to recognize which lifestyle you're touring in capacity of venues. And it was funny, like the tour I did last year, I was on tour with 2 millionaires. So there was a real wash on what the money was and how we
They ain't
stayed
give a shit.
because yeah, they don't have to care or pinch pennies
Yeah.
about if this tour is profitable or not.
They're trying to have a good time.
Yeah, that is really a lot of the messy thing though, is that like you have to acknowledge that if you're an opening band on a 250 seat tour every night, you probably need to sleep on a couch every night if you don't
Yep.
want to go
Yep.
home in the hole.
Once you get to like a meaningful level, you have a booking agent taking 10 to 15% of your guarantee and a manager taking 15% of everything. So essentially, why are you shaking your head, Jesse?
Because every time I think about this, I find it so insane that people are taking 15% 2 times in this, and that anybody signs that contract it's
Well,
Well,
How
because
do you
it's two
shake
separate
it?
jobs.
Yeah.
wait. I'm more saying 2 separate jobs with 2 15% takes. I don't see a lot of people who are getting benefits out of that. I just
Wait,
don't.
hold on. This is a whole other thing. You think managers and agents should take less than 15%?
I think that there needs to be a very, very different compensation structure, and I don't think a lot of the managers I deal with on a daily basis deserve 15% for what they do. Yeah, I
No,
will,
that's probably
I
true.
will, I will flat out say that, like, I get calls from artists maybe every month, I should say. Let's call it 10 a year, that when they show me what their manager's doing, they're asking, is this person providing value? Usually my answer is absolutely not 15%.
Well, I've had people, because once you have marketing and an agent, I've had people fire their managers. Like, manager was just doing marketing. And the managers that are worth their salt are the ones that are go banging down doors and being bulldogs. But
Mhm.
that's an interesting thought we should save for another day, because that's a discussion.
I think that,
Yeah,
that we got barely into the topic we were in, and we should take that topic up another time because I
Yeah,
mean,
dude,
you
we're,
use
we're
like I was
actually
listening-
talking about the whole financial, like how
Mhm.
artists make money, and we've only really touched on touring.
Yeah.
So I mean, and streaming and music royalties, but we should probably pivot to some other income streams here.
But basically, before we get into other income streams, I just want to point out that most artists who are touring at worth 300 tickets or more, pretty much all of them actually, are giving away 25 to 30% of their guarantee when they're getting paid to play the show to their agent and their manager, and then 15% of all the merch to the manager. Just want to make sure people understand that. Now, alternate income streams, there's a bunch of stuff. Andrew, you were talking about a buddy who's like big on Patreon, but isn't necessarily huge. I think that's an option, although I think it's harder than people realize. Do you think that's accurate?
It's hard, but I know multiple people who make thousands of dollars a month on Patreon. I know one making over 15K a month. I know a bunch making like $1,000+ a month, and it's hard for most people. It's a one-on-one grassroots kind of thing. Like every month they're having one-on-one interactions with fans, and they're converting like one person to join their Patreon, and then they do it for 5 years, and now all of a sudden they're making $2,500 a month for the Patreon, and that alone is not enough to live off of. For most people, but then they also have their touring, and they have their streaming, and they have their merch.
Stacks.
Yeah.
I think artists really underestimate the power of, and I'll call them fan clubs. Patreon's one avenue to do it, but we have a funnel that's from discovery to SMS, which is better than email, and then down to a fan club. And the idea is that, I mean, this is the same way, the membership works here, is that you have an added layer of value that you tease consistently. And then at some point, yeah, you have a fan page that, and a lot of them are doing their own apps now. There's a bunch of services where they'll front you the money for the app, and it's sort of like a label, and then that's earning $5, $6, $7,000 a month, and that becomes your stage in a lot of ways where you're making most of your money.
Yeah, there's a really proven monetization thing that once you have a decent amount of enthusiasm, that doing once a month live streams, whether that's a concert or a chat with the fans, and then putting up 1 to 2 unreleased sketches, covers, whatever it is, versions, they could be really stripped down, demos, works in progress. That works for a lot of artists, and particularly one of the artists I work with the most close started doing that on Even recently, and it's like crazy how much that has changed their rent situation. Like rent is now not the thing they worry about at all anymore. There's
Can you
other
explain what
expenses.
Even is real quick?
Yeah, so Even is a Patreon-like service that allows a few different avenues. What a lot of people are doing with it these days is they will window their releases. So, for example, one of my good friends, Damage, they just waited while they were on tour all summer. They had an album out on Even, and then it came out at the end of the tour. But if you liked what you heard on the tour, you could get it through them.
That's cool.
But then the album actually came out on Even. Now, I, for most of my life, have thought windowing is very silly, but now seeing this as a way to do it, the artist Lil Russell also uses this to keep a lot of their catalog Even exclusive, but then has some stuff on streaming.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is kind of like the best of both worlds. I don't know if many people have used Even specifically, but I know a lot of people who will do they'll have a full album done, and then they will make it available on their website or Bandcamp or I guess Even as well, where you can buy it on like vinyl, CD, digital download, like anytime throughout the year. But it's like you can wait. We're gonna be dropping a song a month for the next 14 months, and then the whole album's out, or you just buy it now. And so
Mhm.
basically it's like instead of making that physical for just super fans, it's like now your physical or your digital is an early access ticket to hear the whole album early. But then you still get the benefit of like not skipping streaming. So all the people on there who are like, I'm not going to put my music on streaming platform and devalue the music. This is kind of a way to get the best of both worlds, kind of increase the value of your music while playing the industry game of the whole streaming thing. Also, most listeners stream. So if you skip streaming, it's like you miss most people.
Yeah, like the number of your streamers versus your Patreons is going to be like 0.1%. If that, like that would be good.
Well, what we say is it's like 5% is the greatest win, 1% is you're doing good, is like the general enthusiasm ratio of your monthly listeners, that like you're in a great place. The highest I've ever seen is 5%.
And
Yeah, I
I'm
mean, like
sure that Spotify monthly number wasn't super crazy high.
No,
the
it's
the artist I know getting like 15 grand a month, I think they have between 1,500 and 2,000 patrons paying an average of $10 to $15 a month. I forget the exact number, but it's something in that range. And they have like 1 million followers across platforms. They only have 100K on Spotify, but 1 million followers across all their things. And so very small
yeah.
percentage of people, like it's like 1.5, 2%. That's enough to not just make a living on, but like make bank on.
It also is a powerful leverage tool when it comes to touring. When I was with my previous agency and we worked with Zach Top early on when we were doing like 1,500 cap rooms, now he's doing arenas. What we would do is build that fan page up, pre-sales, get them all excited, and then we would book it so quickly that we would try to leverage to build into bigger rooms or use that for returning. Like when you have the ability to sell tickets outright, the venues notice that sort of thing. Promoters do, and the deals become sweeter the next time around.
Hi, I'm here today with a very good friend of mine, Todd White, owner of King Volume Records, manager of Castle Rat, who are one of the hottest bands in heavy metal right now. How are you today? He's got his own cigar. I've got my cigar.
I'm so good. I'm
I've never
happy
had
to
a
be with
guest
you.
bring their own cigar.
Oh, I thought it was a cigar podcast. I'm actually going to have to dip. No, I'm so happy to be here. I am actually a huge fan of yours. You and Jesse Cannon are sort of guideposts for me in general. Some of the people whose content I take very seriously. So it's kind of an honor in a way. I feel a little bit out of place because you guys are experts and I'm like notably foolish as far as people go.
Have you listened to the podcast? My whole brand is notably foolish.
All right. Yeah. No, I have listened to the podcast. One of your podcasters like isn't familiar with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. And like to me, they're like the biggest band in the world. So it just gives you a sense of like how much bigger your clients and the people you work with and the things you do are. Because I found that to be shocking.
I will go relay that to Andrew.
Andrew. Yes, it was Andrew.
I think it was Andrew.
He couldn't even say the name, which was, that was very entertaining. That was great.
But I also think it's like one of those things that I find so fascinating about music is how massive it is, right? So it's like me and someone else can be metalheads. We can be into completely different things, but we both have long hair and beards, and everyone sees us on the street and thinks we're metal people, right?
Totally.
But also, like, I remember once looking at like the calendar at Madison Square Garden
Mm-hmm.
and realizing I only knew like 2/3 of the acts.
It's so wild.
And it was like, oh, there's so much more here.
There's so much out there. And I've just buried myself in the underground in a way that makes me sort of unaware of like mainstream music, for better or worse. I think there's obviously a lot to learn and lots of really great art to be exposed to. But if you're going to like take it all seriously, you sometimes have to sort of just pick what it is that speaks to you and become intimate with it.
Yeah. And so this is kind of what I want to start with. Can you talk about your background, what's going on with how the label started, and then how you ended up managing Castle Rat?
I can give you the briefest rundown. King Volume Records has been in existence for 9 years. I started the label to put out some music by a friend named Chris Allison, who who had an album under the name Lord Loud. It was really good. It was kind of peak LA psych rock scene, and I thought that he would easily be on like Burger Records or some other, great label. There's a lot of interest in that music, and he was doing it better, I thought, better than anybody else. And the record didn't get picked up. And so I was headed to Austin Psych Fest Levitation as a vendor for my business at the time, which was like kind of screen printed t-shirts and other handmade stuff. And so I made 100 cassette tapes of the Lord Loud EP, went to Levitation, and I had this booth full of stuff that I made, but I loved talking about this cassette tape. That was like the most meaningful thing to me, was to be able to talk about my other friends' music. And it was a lot easier than talking about my own artwork or the other things that I made, because when you're talking about a friend that you believe in, it's so much more exciting to advocate for the people you're excited about than it is for yourself, which feels a little narcissistic and vulnerable to be like, I'm a cool artist, you should buy my art. So that little bit of distance from the thing I made for my friend to sell his music kind of put me in this place of being interested and excited to do that more. And I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to do a record label as a profitable business. So I did it for like 9 years as just a passion project, putting out very limited releases, things I liked, emphasis on the art and packaging. And then I had some life changes and was like, hey, I think I can do this full time. And fortunately, Castle Rat was part of that experience. And their first album, Into the Realm, which came out April 2024, was the on-ramp to me being able to do my record label as a full-time job. So I had this nice experience where I could create relationships, create a community without it being high stakes. So I think there was a pervasive sense of releasing music and emphasizing the fun part of it, and sort of looking for ways to engage people humorously, do a lot of memes, do a lot of skit videos.
Yeah.
And that has become part of our brand, which is recognizable. It's not like massive influencer levels, but inside jokes that people kind of tune in to look for. That's really taken off as a play with Castle Rat, because Castle Rat is, their promotional stuff is very serious. My promotional stuff is very silly. And then together we kind of cover all of the bases with how you can sort of push a band forward.
And so do you want to talk about the Castle Rat story for maybe people who don't know? Because they're basically the most rapidly exploding heavy rock slash metal band going right now. It's kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Castle Rat's great. Anybody who knows me, it's sort of all I talk about. So I apologize to everybody in my life who has to, whoever has to listen to this stuff again. It's a New York fantasy heavy metal band. Quick rundown of characters. There's the Rat Queen. There's Riley Pinkerton. She's the front woman. Basically all came from her mind. There is the Count, who's Franco, Joshua, who's the Druid drummer, and Charlie, the Plague Doctor bass player. So they have a story and they present a live show that includes aspects of the story and their characters within the show. And it harkens back to what I imagine a lot of theatrical metal bands were like in the 80s. And so there's some touchstones to that. A lot of people say Dio, other, underground bands from that time. And so I think that there's a certain amount of nostalgia that comes across as if this is something from the past, which is very cool. Musically, it references Black Sabbath a lot, and it's sort of grown into the next decade from maybe 70s into the 80s. It's music that's very inspired, but I think in their new album, it feels very fresh, and they're taking a lot of those ideas and condensing them, reconfiguring them. The new album is a concept album that includes lots of magical beasts, and that is part of a small part of the performance as well. So they released their album last year. It was pretty explosive regarding how it was perceived. They sold lots of physical media. They started touring pretty successfully.
Talk about the Kickstarter?
Oh, sure. After 1 year after the release, we were able to do a Kickstarter. I started organizing it July 2024. I think we launched in December 2024. We had a goal of $15,000, and we hit our goal in 34 minutes, I believe. So the support and community that the band had built was there for them in a massive way. And by the end of that month, I think it was $140,000 that the band had raised. And then we did a post campaign via backer kit that was another $15,000. So combined together, I believe that Castle Rat and King Volume, we did the biggest heavy metal Kickstarter that has ever existed. There was another one that happened maybe a decade ago that raised a somewhat similar amount of money. So it's kind of hard to verify, but I think it's the biggest heavy metal Kickstarter of all time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shit fuck of money.
Yeah. It's good.
So,
And to be clear, to a certain extent, it's a pre-order. So there's a lot of expenses involved. Everybody's getting lots of cool rewards. And that was part of it, is we made a lot of great stuff to incentivize people to support the band. And the band did a great job promoting, making videos and so on. But Kickstarter it's a lot of work. And I had never done one before. I consulted with, I'm not going to remember his name right now. He wrote a book about doing Kickstarters, and it's called Six Figure Fundraising. And that was very helpful. And I thought it was funny to meet with the Six Figure Kickstarter guy, and it freaking worked. We got the Six Figure Kickstarter. So
Derek Miller. Six-figure crowdfunding.
Derek
The
Miller.
No Bullshit Guide to Running a Life-Changing Campaign. I've heard good things about this book. I have a lot of artists, including people who have like a decent audience, trying to do a Kickstarter. And I kind of generally advocate against crowdfunding these days because I feel like it's tapped. What do you feel you did that made the Castle Rat Kickstarter work? Because I feel like generally Kickstarter is such an oversaturated market.
First and foremost, the band built their brand first. So they have a community of people who are interested in supporting them. And I think that you have to do a lot of work before you consider doing something like crowdfunding to be sure that you have an audience that's interested. And so, it doesn't seem like it's directly related, but if you can tour, if you can do just a lot of the basic things of interacting with fans, knowing who they are, and also the personal work of making sure you represent yourself in a way that connects to an audience, which is to say, like, putting in the work of discovering who your perfect supporter, who your perfect fan is. And a lot of bands just think that, fans are a sort of nebulous thing. But I think where the real success is to hone down in and create this very dimensional picture of who your perfect fan is, so that you know what your goals are to connect with them. And because of the theatrical and interesting look of Castle Rat, it creates a wide net of people who are into games, tabletop gaming, RPGs, cosplay, heavy metal, just in general, doom metal specifically. There's a theatrical aspect that appeals to a different type of people, Ren Fair, medieval. So this is a big net, and all of these people find their place within the community. And so before you even consider doing Kickstarter or crowdfunding, you have to build a crowd. So know what that crowd is and how you are going to connect with them. Do you have a newsletter? Do you are you active on Bandcamp? Do you are you active on Instagram? And so you need to accumulate those people first. Then you want to have very strong incentives, good art direction, clear, fun, unique things that they could only get via this one channel. So you're not asking for money like, I need a lot of money to make this cool thing. You are saying, this specific budget, you can help us fulfill this. This is what you get. These things are cool. And so a lot of crowdfunding, they don't want you to think of it as a store. And I would push on you to say you have to think of that as a store where things are a little bit more expensive than they would be otherwise. And certainly it's good to have incentives that are not just selling something, but if you think of it as a pre-sale store and the things that you have are unique and you can't get them anywhere else, then it's easy to give people money that way.
I think that people don't take advantage of the flexibility of the platform, especially if you're doing it with an independent label. A lot of times you see a Kickstarter and it's just like bigger and bigger bundles, and then eventually the artist will fly you to come hang out with them. And I feel like with what you did, it felt a little more like experiential, if that makes sense. And I think that was the goal, because so much of Castle Rat is creating the universe.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of room for growth in the experiential side. It's a little hard logistically to have anticipated that it would be so successful. And if we did it again, that would probably be the way that we could expand, is with specific events and so on. But originally, when you're making things around a $15,000 campaign,
sure, you're only
that's
going
not
so far.
Even in your,
yeah. But what I'm trying to say is I felt like you created a way by like having lots of signed stuff and by having like exclusive merch, you kind of created a way where it felt like, oh, this is different than just a pre-order.
Yeah, and we did something that was both good and challenging for us, which is we set this up so that it was going to happen the month before we recorded. So there was a certain amount of pressure that we created where it was like, this has to be successful and you're participating in it because we're going to record this record the week after the Kickstarter campaign. So it's not like you're giving money to this nebulous thing where you're like, yeah, we'll make an album at some point. It was like, we know the producer, we know the place.
Yeah.
Your money right now is going to help this happen next week. And so maybe that's part of the experience.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Was there a moment other than the Kickstarter where you felt like, because Castle Rat very quickly went from like, I think the first time I saw them was, I want to say pre-pandemic, with like 50 people in the room. And now it's like they're wrapping up a tour where they're selling hundreds of tickets a night. And the trajectory has been, most of the growth has been post-pandemic. Like I just saw them back in the day because they were a New York band and I lived there. What do you feel fueled this exponential growth? Was there a moment where you were like, holy fuck, it's happening?
I think the day the pre-orders went live on the first album,
Okay.
It was like nothing I had ever experienced. You know, like when you create a label for this long and you sort of create a fertile soil and you hope that something kind of spectacular will grow out of this garden. And it's like a redwood tree shooting up, overnight, where you're just like, it was shocking. And it it kind of has not stopped since then. The success
But
has come in waves, but it's just been endless since the day one of that first album pre-order.
what do you think spurred that initial success?
Well, I think the band just did a really, really good job of knowing what it was that they were setting out to accomplish. They wanted to have a theatrical band with lore, with good heavy metal, interesting look. The other thing about Castle Rat that a lot of bands don't do is they perform the show and they commit to it all of the way.
Yeah.
And this band
Yeah.
does so much with so little. And when you go to see them, it's not like there's a joke and there's like a wink and a nod. It's like you are transported when you go to see
Yeah.
this band. And so I think the look and everything got people interested. Like, what is this? And then you go and see them, and it's actually really special. It's actually a unique experience. It's actually a community you want to be a part of. And so as they started playing shows, the organic growth of, whoa, this is like a lot more than a cool look. This is a unique moment in time. These people are fabulous musicians, and they're wanting to put on a special experience for you. And that's just a feedback loop between people buying the record and going to the shows. And yeah, it's a special thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that full commitment is deeply important, especially if you're going to dress the way they dress, right? Like in weird costumes with sort of this like 70s fantasy thing going on. What do you feel most DIY artists don't understand about making their music blow up?
I think that it has a lot to do with looking internally and having very clear idea of what it is that you want to do, and then being willing to take risks, being willing to, like Kessler has almost an extreme example where they're so vulnerable in the sense of being perceived as silly, but doing it so well and believing in themselves so much that like the haters just fall to the wayside. Like they played with they played with Power Trip and 200 Stab Wounds in Denver a couple months ago. An extreme music crowd. And I was like, this will be interesting to see how they're perceived, because sonically they are absolutely an anomaly for this lineup. And they won over the 2,000 plus crowd, was just with them every moment. So excited to be there because Castle Rat created an immersive experience and brought everybody in and had them sort of be vulnerable with the band. So I think when I see what new bands could do, it's just taking a lot of time to do, like the music is very, very important that the quality is high, but the music should be informed by a specific set of goals of how you want to portray yourself, how you want your concepts to be palpable. So like when you listen to the music, your identity, all of the things that you'd like to communicate are actually accessible, either in the little bit of photos that people might see or inherent into the music, your attitude, your whatever it is that makes you special. Yeah, some bands just have it, like Power Trip's early albums, where their attitude, their perspective is so undeniable. You just listen to a little bit of that and you get it. And you want to be a part of it
Yeah.
because you're like, oh, that's going to be exciting to see.
That Power Trip live record especially is like, me and my old roommate used to just listen to that all the time. Because but it's like what you're saying, right? And I want to just point this out really quick based on what we're discussing, because obviously Castle Rat is such like an extreme example of a show and rah, rah, rah. But like you definitely see artists who like dress relatively normal, but they find ways to do it because it's like maybe we're wearing jeans and t-shirts, but at least it's like jeans and t-shirts that fit the aesthetic of the genre we're doing. 200 Stab Wounds is a great example. I remember the first time I saw them and it felt like seeing an 80s death metal band, except they were my age and they were like they were they were my age, right? But like they had like the right facial hair and the right and I don't think that was I don't think it was like, oh, you got to shave your face to look like this picture from the 80s, but I think it was more just like a embodying the thing.
Embodying the thing. Exactly. Yeah. And there's an intensity and an excitement to their shows that makes you feel like you're going to see something special, not just another ho-hum death metal experience.
Yeah. Another ho-hum death metal experience.
It's true.
That would be a great name for a record.
If you go to all death metal show, the intensity quickly becomes moot point and it no longer has very much impact. I think there's a dynamic sensibility that Castle Rat has, especially on this new album, where like the songs build to an intensity that would border on extreme music, but it's used so sparingly that it actually hits really hard. And that's a cool choice. Like a thrash riff that's gonna, just be a small little part, but like you want it so bad when it finally comes that it's just very, very tasteful.
100%. And the new record, I feel, is definitely a dramatic step up.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
If you're enjoying this interview, there's 30 more minutes of it, but you need to be a premium member to see it. Head to the description to sign up on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. We really appreciate the support.
All right, guys, we got controversy on the internet this week. I'm going to really shock you here.
Big surprise.
So, Somber, who I would say is the biggest breakout artist of the year, he had someone go to their show that's gets viral views pretty often, and they had a very bad review. Let's see what she has to say.
Hi guys, good morning, welcome back. This is gonna be a little different than my typical content, but I had one of the worst experiences of my life this weekend, and it feels like a disservice to the public to not share it, so here we go. I went to go see Sombr Sunday night at the Anthem in DC. If you don't know who Sombr is, he's a 20-year-old artist. He blew up online, I think on TikTok. He has a lot of hits. I like a lot of his music. A lot of people my age like a lot of his music, whatever. I was really excited to go see him. I don't really go to concerts that often unless I really love an artist. I was so excited to see this performance. By far, genuinely the worst concert I've ever been to in my life for a multitude of reasons, but I'm gonna explain to you why, if you're over the age of 16, you should not spend your money on a Sombr concert. Let me walk you through my evening. We get in line, it's pouring down rain, the line's like 1.5 miles long. That's all cool. Sold out show, Mother Nature, I don't care. We're waiting in line and there's a group in front of us of like 4 teenage girls and their dad. And I wasn't scanning the entire line. I was trying not to get rained on, but I was just like, that's really sweet. They must be big Sombr fans so that their dad brought them to the show. That was
Okay. I think we caught a vibe, but basically what she complains about is that there's a lot of teenagers there and that he told bad jokes. So he replied with this.
I thought I was chronically online, but it's just come to my attention that there's a TikTok drama going around because a 25-year-old attended my concert and was basically complaining that there were too many tweens there. I was making too many brain rot jokes, and she just thought it was a cringe concert. And also she was body shaming me, and it's kind of started a massive body shaming hate train directed towards me on a lot of videos of me on the internet right now, which is, I totally respect people having opinions, but I am a 20-year-old artist, freshly 20. And if you're 25 years old and you're going to come to my concert and not expect people younger than you to be there when I, the artist, am 5 years younger than you, it's just a skill issue. Also, like, the jokes thing, like, you had to have known about my online presence before coming to my concert. I mean, anyone who knows me knows I've never uttered a serious word in my life. And also, I make jokes for 5 minutes of the concert, and the rest is music. Like, live a little, enjoy life. Every age, sex, sexuality, gender, race, everyone is welcome at my concert, and I mean everyone. You guys need to find problematic people to hate on because I am just existing. Also, I'm just going to give a quick tutorial. Also, I just remembered that I had a fever and bronchitis at the show she went to, but the show goes on. I will not cancel unless I'm on my deathbed.
Yep.
So we should say, so you guys can measure this. I looked, and the TikTok has 5.5 million views. I could not find it on Instagram. of a
Her TikTok or
original-
his TikTok?
her TikTok. His just came out, so we don't want to measure it quite yet since we're taping this close to when he did it, but we can say that that's pretty fucking viral. And I saw a lot of videos then.
For a 15-minute long video, just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And I will say, I get him in my feed quite often, and I saw all of a sudden a flood of videos that were, as he said, body shaming him. They started saying he looks like a water bug.
Don't laugh. That's so nice.
It's not nice, but not inaccurate. But anyway, what do we think? Is it worth it for artists to respond to something like this?
I didn't hear about this artist until you sent this video, which I was shocked to
You
see at
old
58
man.
million monthly listeners. So
The 33rd biggest artist in the world right now, according to Spotify.
yeah, and I found it crazy that she loved this artist so much, where she admits that she doesn't go to concerts very often. So she clearly likes this artist a lot and knew enough about him. So she should have had an idea who the fan base is. Like if I went to a Taylor Swift concert, I'm expecting a bunch of screaming girls, right? That's like the stereotype. You go to screaming every time something happens, it's like deafening, right? Or maybe not now because she's older and I'm thinking about how it was like a decade ago. But I would expect to see a bunch of super young people, teenagers and stuff. So I find a lot of her complaints silly, especially when she's complaining about how he's playing to the crowd and doing like memes that group of people would identify with. It's like, obviously, like he knows who's there watching him, loving him, giving him money, buying his tickets, buying his merch. Why would he not cater to that crowd? I think she's being dumb, in my opinion. But maybe this is what she does. Maybe she makes bad takes for views on the internet. There's plenty of other people that do that. So maybe that's her whole shtick.
Look, no matter what artist or what product you have, at some point somebody's not going to like. There's no avoiding that. There's 24 people at that show that feel the same way that she feels. They just chose not to make a 15-minute video about it. And even if they did, for a video to do that many views is wild. And I think there's a part of especially US culture where the hate train is interesting, right? Like the criticism. I find it interesting, and this is going to be a hot take. I think she's completely valid for having such a strong opinion when tickets are $300 or more. So I think if you're spending, am I wrong there? Were you shaking your head?
I know.
I have no idea what they cost. So
it hit me. You're right. They were probably $300. I don't think about that when it's an upcoming artist like this. But God, you're like totally right.
20 years ago, that would have been a $60 ticket. And for you to walk away,
I don't think 20.
There's also a few like
20.
complaints she makes to me that like felt very like valid. Like how she's saying that he knows that a lot of his audience is like teenage girls, and he was on stage making a bunch of like weird like sex jokes that are very like inappropriate, and so there is a lot of like weird things that she brings up that are.
I find that one invalid because his lyrics are literally like, "Yo, I be fucking."
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess it's like when people complain about like
if you
when
go
people
and
complain about
ChatGPT
Sabrina Carpenter shows, and it's like if you listen to her songs, they're like super dirty. And so like parents will be mad when they bring to the show, and it's silly because like if you listen to any of her songs, that's what you signed up for. So I don't know his music good enough to know that. But
I'll tell you this: if you went into ChatGPT and you said, "What does Somber sing about?" It'd literally say he used to have really good sex with this chick, and now she doesn't. Leaves him on red.
I think it's interesting. I think there's two sides to this, right? I think going on the internet and like talking shit about a concert that like very frequently when I see people like mad about concerts, I kind of get the impression that like you just don't go to a lot of concerts and that's why you don't like it. Which is a little bit the impression I got from this video. On the flip side, yeah, the tickets are $300. But then I think we get to this place where you have to start asking yourself, like, especially for like the mega stars, right? Sombr is 33 in the world, right? I think you get to this place where it's like, well, the market is allowing us to have $300 nosebleed tickets for this artist. But how do you still make that feel like a premium experience? Because that's so much money.
And that has a lot to do with artistic and creative direction of the show that I bet you his team isn't experienced with. Because I spent $300 to go see Linkin Park, and oh my God, that was worth $300. But that is a 30-year-old band with a team who understands how to put on a production, right? And so I think that if you have, God, man, I think about it. I'm such a nerd. I think about it in terms of like, that's a PlayStation. I could go buy a PlayStation or I can see your show, right? Like that's such an insane price point for any show.
But
I
she
saw
she really didn't know what she was shining. Like a lot of her complaints about like the Gen Z or Gen Alpha jokes and memes and pandering to like
Yeah, she
the
should have known.
teenagers.
Yeah.
I don't think she has any excuse for not expecting that other than just ignorance.
I mean, I love that he met her energy by using 25-year-old as a slur repeatedly in that video.
That made me feel really young.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife has already pointed out that I'm older than his mother, so I already know where I stand in things like this. But I think that there's an interesting thing when you said there, though, Dustin. Of I actually have seen some of his show because I was considering whether to go or not when I got an invite, and it's like it actually was produced. But what's interesting is I would actually say that he's one of the most enthused artists around right now. He just crossed 1 billion listens on Spotify for one of his songs. Some people were even like, "There's no way this motherfucker has more listens than Chapel Roan," but he has an insane amount of interest in him. But he's so young in his career that it looked a lot like the show wasn't very developed yet. Like that he's still finding the sea legs, which you can't fault an artist this young in his career with not having his sea legs quite yet and being like, when people are expecting a Matty Healy or something, a generational talent at that.
He said he just turned 20, so he's like barely out of high school. He's been releasing music for 4 years, and I would bet that most of his successes happened in the last 2.
Most of the successes happen in the last 1, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So like
But-
he's even if like all of her complaints were 100% valid, it's like he is pretty new and he's been thrown from probably like what most people consider like a nobody artist to top 100 in the planet. And I have to imagine the growing scaling pains of that are real. Like all of us have had scaling pains in our businesses and stuff. Like imagine going from like I don't know, insignificant artist in the grand scheme of things to number 33. Like that's got to be crazy.
And
to-
I think
to
it's
deal with.
forgivable if the tickets aren't $300 a nosebleeds.
And the question becomes, should he have made a response video? In my eyes, if something goes this big,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
You gotta-
generally my thing is like do like the Trump thing and like just don't acknowledge and just keep going. But like
I don't think that's what Trump does, but
I think it's a brand thing.
This dude
'cause,
doesn't
like,
live in the States, I think.
you know, like falling in reverse, Ronnie Radke replies
Yeah.
to every person who shits on him. And that's basically his marketing method, right? Like he
Yeah.
finds people
Yeah.
who complain about him and he just rips them a new one. And then it gets a bunch of buzz and people talk about how much of a mean man he is. And then he gets way more views and now he's one of the biggest rock bands in the world. I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff that happens, but like that's like his marketing method. And so I think for Somber, it's more just like he seems like this sweet young kid. And so it does seem kind of weird. I don't know anything about him, just like the 1-minute video. So I feel like if he was going out and being petty and replying to everyone leaving negative things, it would make him look like a dick. But this one being so viral, and he handled it pretty well. He made some digs at her, like the touching grass thing. It was very subtle. He wasn't like
It feels
swearing, he
very
wasn't-
on brand for him too. Like being
Yeah.
a Gen A, is it Gen A actually? Jesus.
Gen Alpha.
Yeah, but is
Try not to
he
embarrass me on
Gen
the
Z or
podcast,
Gen
Dustin.
A? Anyways, but it's very on brand to respond to something like this and feed that energy back at people. I mean, like you said, making 25 sound old is definitely a good move on his part, you know? So I enjoyed it. I think it's great.
I mean, I think there's an interesting thing too that you could, like I was saying, with the so fast 1 billion having better metrics than even a Chapel Roan has achieved at times. Like, it's so clear that the enthusiasm is there for him. So if he weaponizes the audience for sympathy against somebody who's doing something like this, it's probably going to be a net good. But whereas if I had an artist that it was questionable how much allegiance they had, I don't know that I'd not just ignore this one and decide that maybe you sit this round out.
What do you think would happen if instead of this lady complaining about Somber, she was complaining about a Taylor Swift show? And how do your opinion change for what Taylor Swift should do in that situation? Because I think she would get eaten alive if she replied the same way that Somber did.
I think there's a very interesting thing. That's a great question that those fan bases already do is they're already weaponized against anybody criticizing them. Is what we talked about, is that there's routinely things shut down. I mean, the new rules were instituted on social media because of the way Beyonce's fans behaved at one point.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds as if many people are joining her. Am I getting this right? Joining her in complaining about him, or at least bullying him.
There's clearly a tide of backlash, which I think is always to be expected after you add an entire summer. I mean, the other crazy thing about him is he is routinely, as a brand new artist, had 2 songs on the chart, in the top 40 chart at a time, and literally one replacing the other as the top of the chart at one point. Like, he's having a wild run, but I think that's one of the best things about him is he's figured out this very particular emotion. Even I think he has probably the best bio on Spotify right now because it says exactly what he is.
The bio says late nights and young romance, Instagram at Somber.
Perfectly genius for the meta of what his music is, and it tells everybody exactly what they're going to get if they hit play. Is they're going to get songs about how not enjoyable it is to fall in love and out of love very fast.
And he's also he's also very good looking, which, I can relate. That brings a lot of hate.
It's really true. The gays I know and the women are obsessed with his neck anatomy.
He does have a very long neck.
They want to give a man some neck for his neck.
I will say the one thing, and this is how I learned about Somber and discovered him, is when an artist is blowing up this quickly, without a doubt, I have artists in my world and my clients of mine trying to unpack what he's doing right and then trying to replicate it. And the most annoying thing is like, they always point at like one little detail. He's blowing up because he did this piece of content. And I'm like, guys, like it is so much more complex, and also mostly the music. Like it's almost always the music. You don't get to 58 million monthly listeners because you did a cool dance on TikTok,
I dissected him because it was the most requested artist I got to dissect this year. There's a lot of things, but it is definitely a haystack of many things, whether it's recognizability, overacting, and a insanely good narrative about his ex-girlfriend that he continually plays up.
That's the other thing too, is that artists like these need to lean on good narratives. And I'll have artists have great narratives and they'll say it, talk about it once, and then that's it. Yeah. And they're like, I already said it. I already posted about that. I'm like, you gotta fucking sorry, this is getting on another topic, but the takeaways are always bad. They're always like, oh, I want to do that one piece of content.
Even like Big X the Plug is another really good example of someone where it's like dialing that narrative down and that leading to all the other pieces.
So Matt, why don't you explain to them what Big X the Plug's narrative is, aside from biting money?
I don't even know who that is.
He's at one of the more, what I would say is, in the rap world in the last 18 months, he's a very similar trajectory, but he's always biting money.
Big X.
He is always biting money.
It's Dub Plug.
Man, I thought the names wouldn't get stupider after the whole Lil phase we went through. But Big X the Plug. Wow.
And he has it like tattooed across his belly. It's sick.
Oh, he's the guy who did the Bailey Zimmerman song. He's great.
Yeah. Like basically, like he's really fascinating because it's kind of like Somber, where it's, what is the music about? Well, the music's about like, it all like starts with him being in solitary confinement when he's like, his kid is like turning 1. And that was like the moment he was like, what the fuck? How could it get any worse than this? And that's like a really compelling jumping off point for an artist. Much more compelling, in my opinion, than I broke up with this girl and now I'm sad. Even if Somber does it really well, like I'm not trying to like diss Somber. I'm just trying to say like solitary confinement while your kid turns 1 is fucking crazy. And
it's not as relatable.
He basically builds, but it's about that intensity of experience.
Yeah, right? No, I get it's a good story, but you got to sell it differently, and it's harder.
Yeah, but then he like couches it within like the experience of being a father, the experience of breaking up with the mother of his child, and then I think kind of like Somber, it's really important that you show like this ongoing level of enthusiasm where things are going good. And like the level of enthusiasm he had about like his country collab record really made, like, you could see he was having a good time, so you had a good time following it. Post Malone was also a really good example of this in like 2018, where like you wanted to have a good time with Post Malone. right?
I mean, he's still out
Um,
there having a good time. He was on Broadway a couple of weeks ago doing the same thing.
But yeah, so my point is like these narratives matter. Somber replying to that lady probably was on brand, even if it
Yeah.
might have not been a great idea, but he has the weaponized fan base.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. We're trying to grow this as much as possible. So if you could send this to a musician friend and continue the discussion, we'd really, really appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and then turn on notifications so you don't miss our episodes every single Tuesday. And if you could rate us on Apple Podcast and Spotify, it helps us a ton. Tune in next week for more.